The lights dimmed in the studio. The host announced the next contestant, a shy-looking young man with calm eyes and a quiet smile. He walked onto the stage holding an old acoustic guitar. You could feel the silence settle in. Simon leaned forward in his chair, curious. Simon asked, "What's your name, young man?" The contestant replied softly, "My name is Marco." "And how old are you, Marco?" "I'm 23. Simon smiled. "And what are you going to do for us today?" "I'm going to sing a song that means a lot to me. It's something that connects me to my father." The audience murmured. Some thought he meant his late father, others thought it was just part of a touching story. No one suspected what was about to be revealed. Simon asked, "What's your father's name?" Marco took a breath and said quietly, "Freddie Aguilar." For a second, the entire theater froze. The crowd gasped. The camera zoomed in on Simon's face, completely shocked. Freddie Aguilar, the legendary Filipino musician who gave the world the timeless song Anak, a song that has crossed generations, languages, and continents. Simon blinked, taken aback. "Wait, are you serious?" "Freddie Aguilar, the singer of Anak." Marco nodded. "Yes, sir. He was my father. But I never met him. He didn't know about me." A ripple of emotion moved through the audience. Marco's calmness carried a quiet pain, the kind that comes from years of silence and unanswered questions. The host's voice trembled slightly as he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the hidden son of Freddie Aguilar." The judges exchanged looks of disbelief. The camera panned across the crowd, people wiping tears from their eyes before he even began. Simon leaned back, his expression softening. "All right, Marco. The stage is yours." Marco sat down on the stool, tuned his guitar gently, and began to play. The first notes filled the air, familiar yet different. It was Anak, but not the version anyone had ever heard before. It was raw, emotional, stripped down to just his voice and the guitar. His voice was hauntingly similar to Freddie's, warm, soulful, filled with the same depth of feeling. But there was something new in it too. Pain, longing, a lifetime of wondering what it would have been like to know the man who gave him his gift of music. The lyrics rolled out, each word trembling with emotion. "You were conceived from love, but you strayed away." By the time he reached the second verse, half the audience was already in tears. Simon Cowell had his hand over his mouth. You could see that he was deeply moved. Marco wasn't performing to impress anyone, he was singing to heal something that had been broken inside him for years. Then, halfway through the song, something extraordinary happened. The giant screen behind the stage lit up. A black and white photo of Freddie Aguilar appeared, playing his own guitar. It wasn't part of Marco's plan. The production team, realizing who he was and what he was singing, decided to pay tribute on the spot. The moment that photo appeared, the crowd erupted in applause. Marco's voice cracked for the first time. You could feel him fighting back tears, but he didn't stop. He kept singing, even more powerful now, as though he was having a conversation with his father through music. When he hit the final line, "Anak, bakit ka nagkaganyan?" he looked up at the photo and whispered, "I forgive you." Silence. A long, heavy silence filled the room. Even the air seemed still. Then, suddenly, the audience rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, crying. Simon Cowell stood up too. It's rare to see Simon standing before the end of a performance, but he was visibly moved. Simon said, his voice shaky, "Marco, I don't even know what to say. That was something I'll never forget. I've judged thousands of auditions, but this wasn't just a song. This was a son talking to his father through music. That's what real artistry is." Another judge added, "You have Freddie's voice, but you also have your own soul. You didn't imitate him. You honored him." The crowd chanted, "Golden buzzer. Golden buzzer." Simon looked at his fellow judges, took a deep breath, and then reached out to hit the golden buzzer. Gold confetti exploded across the stage. Marco dropped his guitar and covered his face as tears streamed down. He looked up at the lights, smiling through his tears. Simon walked up onto the stage to hug him. It was a rare sight. Simon Cowell hugging a contestant, whispering something in his ear. Later, Marco revealed that Simon had said, "Your father would be proud." That night, Marco's audition clip went viral. Within hours, it hit millions of views across social media. People from all over the world flooded the comments section with love, saying they could feel the soul of Freddie Aguilar living through his son. Others said they cried the moment he whispered those final words. News channels picked up the story. Hidden son of Freddie Aguilar shocks the world on PGT, became headline news across Asia and even in Western media outlets. Music critics called it the most emotional audition in Got Talent history. But for Marco, fame wasn't the point. In an interview after the show, he said quietly, "I didn't come here for fame. I came here for peace. I grew up listening to my father's songs, not knowing him. I always felt like a part of me was missing. Tonight, I think I finally found it." When asked how he learned to sing, Marco said that music came naturally. "I think it was in my blood," he smiled. "Even when I was little, I'd sit by the radio and try to match his voice. My mother told me I had his tone. I guess she was right." After his performance, the producers contacted Freddie Aguilar's family. They were stunned by the resemblance in the voice. A few days later, an emotional letter arrived at the show's studio, reportedly from one of Freddie's relatives. It said, "We watched the performance. We see Freddie in him. Tell Marco that the Aguilar family hears him, and we welcome him with open hearts." When that message was read to him backstage, Marco broke down. He couldn't speak for several minutes, just sobbed into his hands. It was the first time in his life he had ever felt truly connected to the man whose songs had shaped the music of his country. In the next round of Philippines Got Talent, Marco returned with another emotional performance, a song he wrote himself called Letter to My Father. It was a hauntingly beautiful piece, written as if Freddie could hear him from somewhere beyond. The lyrics were poetic, honest, and deeply personal. He sang about growing up without guidance, about learning to be strong, and about finding forgiveness. The judges were in tears again, and Simon said, "I've been doing this for decades, and I can tell you, talent can be taught, but soul cannot. You were born to sing, Marco." The video of his second performance broke another record. Viewers from all over the world began translating Anakin Letter to My Father into different languages, sharing the story of a son who found his father through music. People in the comments wrote things like, "I didn't understand the language, but I felt every word," and, "This is why music is universal. It speaks where words can't." As the show continued, Marco became one of the finalists. Each week, he performed songs that reflected stages of his life, from loneliness to hope. One week, he sang a Tagalog English version of Bridge Over Troubled Water, dedicating it to his mother who raised him alone. By the finale, everyone knew his story. The producers replayed clips of his first audition, reminding everyone of that unforgettable reveal, the hidden son of Freddie Aguilar. When the final night came, the atmosphere in the arena was electric. Thousands of fans held banners saying, "Team Marco," and, "For Freddie's legacy." Simon Cowell, seated center stage, smiled warmly when Marco stepped up to the mic. This time, Marco chose to perform a mash-up, Anik blended with his original Letter to My Father. It was pure magic. He had arranged it himself, weaving the melodies together seamlessly. When he sang, "I Am Your Son," carrying your song, the crowd erupted. At the end of his performance, he placed his guitar down, looked up again, and said softly, "Thank you, Papa." The judges were all on their feet, tears streaming. Simon stood and said, "Marco, I think this is the most meaningful finale performance I've ever seen. You've shown the world what forgiveness, legacy, and love sound like." That night, Marco won Philippines Got Talent 2025. The moment his name was announced, gold confetti filled the air again. He fell to his knees, crying, as the crowd shouted his name. The host ran over and said, "How do you feel right now?" Marco smiled and said, "I feel like my father finally heard me." After the show, interviews poured in. He appeared on talk shows, radio stations, and even international networks. But despite the fame, Marco stayed humble. He continued to perform small concerts dedicated to underprivileged children, saying, "I know what it's like to grow up with little. If music gave me a voice, I want to use it for good." Simon Cowell kept in touch. In an interview months later, Simon said, "I'll never forget that young man. Sometimes, you see someone perform and you know they've changed something, not just in music, but in life. Marco did that. He reminded us why we started loving music in the first place. Years later, Marco released his debut album called Legacy. The first track, of course, was Anik 2025, For My Father. It became a massive hit, topping charts not just in the Philippines but in several other countries. Music critics said his voice carried both the spirit of Freddie and the soul of a new generation. Marco often performed barefoot, just like his father used to. Fans said it was his way of staying grounded, a symbol of humility. During one concert in Manila, he sang to an audience of thousands, holding up a guitar that once belonged to Freddie, gifted to him by the Aguilar family after his PGT victory. Before his final encore that night, Marco said, "This guitar once sang the world's most beautiful lullaby. Tonight, I sing it again, not to mourn, but to celebrate." The crowd cheered as he began the first familiar chords of Anik. People sang along, holding their phones up like candles. It was no longer just a song about regret. It had become a song of healing, a bridge between two souls, a father and son who never met, but who were forever connected through music. Simon Cowell attended one of his international concerts later that year. When reporters asked Simon why he came, he smiled and said, "Because once in a lifetime, you see a story that reminds you what humanity really sounds like." Marco is that story. As the years passed, Marco used his fame to support young Filipino musicians. He created a foundation to help children from poor families learn music for free. He often said, "If I hadn't sung that day, I might still be invisible. Music saved me. Now I want it to save others too." His journey became the subject of a documentary titled The Hidden Sun, which premiered at film festivals around the world. It showed his childhood, his struggle, his audition, and his rise to fame. Critics called it the most touching music story of the decade. In the final scene of the documentary, Marco stands by the ocean, holding his guitar. The wind blows through his hair as he hums the melody of Anik. He turns to the camera and says, "I don't think I'm here to replace my father. I'm here to continue what he started, reminding people that love and forgiveness can live forever through a song." And that, perhaps, is what makes his story so unforgettable. Not the fame, not the shock, but the heart. A son who turned pain into purpose, and a stage performance into a legacy that moved the entire world. So when Simon Cowell said he couldn't believe what he had just witnessed, it wasn't just because of the voice. It was because, for a few minutes on that stage, he saw something we all dream of, a broken story made whole through the power of music. And somewhere up there, maybe Freddie Aguilar was listening too, smiling at the son he never knew, proud of the man he became.